Hello, welcome to the Geeky Clinicians podcast.
Yay.
Hey, welcome. And as always, I am Chief Geek here, Dr. Deborah Dantzler. And with me is my right hand, uh, Jacinta.
I'm Jacinta. I am the lead clinician here and lead geek.
Excellent. And today, on this episode of Geeky Clinicians podcast, we have the privilege and the honor of having Miss Sierra Hillsman, who I have known
Yay.
I have known for and have had the pleasure of watching grow into just an amazing clinician from when she was just a budding clinician in her pre-license days, getting supervision, and now to being just an amazing person who's doing a lot out here in these clinical streets with workplace wellness and just amazing stuff. And so Sierra is the owner of a private practice that's called 1-3 Wellness Collective. And she's the owner of Legacy Speaks. So she'll tell us a little bit more about herself, and then we'll just jump into our discussion. Welcome, Sierra.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Deb and Jacinta. I truly appreciate you ladies so much. You guys have been so pivotal on my clinical journey. So a little bit about me. Hi, everyone. My name is Sierra Hillsman. I'm a licensed professional counselor, licensed in both the states of Georgia and Maryland. I am the owner and founder of 1-3 Wellness Collective, where we focus on life transitions and life adjustments. I'm also the founder of Legacy Speaks, which is a premier training and development firm helping working professionals overcome work-related stress so that they become the best versions of themselves. And it's such an honor to be here. I'm like, Bill is leading geek. I'm trying to get on the geek squad too.
Yes, you are definitely part of our geeky clinicians because we love you so much. So we're so happy to have you here. So yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, and so it's so interesting because like I said, when I first met Sierra, you were still working towards licensure. You were in supervision and with another one of our sorors and
Yeah.
getting supervision from her as well. But I want to know the full origin story, right?
Mhm.
Let's go all the way back, all the way back. What was the earliest like interest in ultimately becoming a geeky clinician? Earliest your journey towards to where you are right now.
Absolutely. I love answering this question. So originally, I went to school for communication sciences and disorders, and I had a double major in psychology as well. My goal was to become a speech language therapist for deaf children. So my minor is in American Sign Language.
Wow.
But I ended up having like this, I guess, postgraduate crisis where you graduate and people tell you that you're going to get this job, and that did not happen for me. So I moved to Atlanta to transition and try something different, something new. And when I moved, my father, he ended up experiencing depression in the form of suicidality and homicidality. Now, granted, he's been living with depression for years at this point. And I think when you don't have the language for it,
Yeah.
you know, like, hey, something is wrong, but you don't know like what it actually is. You just think that your father is angry or like he doesn't know how to express his emotions or he's just a Jamaican from New York. It is what it is, and we get to like normalize that within our community without knowing what it truly is. And so
Yeah.
one day my mom called me up and she told me what happened, and I'm like, wow, like this is insane. And it just made me realize the importance of Black mental health.
Mhm.
um, and why it's so important to equip individuals, not just clinicians, but lay people with the skills, the resources, and the information so that they can be able to navigate their mental health for themselves as well. So initially, I enrolled in my clinical mental health counseling program at the University of West Georgia with the intent on becoming an advocate. I just wanted to learn the skills as well as the concepts so that I could take that information and do trainings. I've always loved training and development. So I wanted to become an advocate. And then as I started my journey and started meeting amazing clinicians like yourselves and realizing like we're out here, we're just booked and busy. And I was just like, you know what, I'm gonna join the army of the Lord and become a clinician as well. Because I hear this all the time. It's like I can't find a great clinician, I can't find a Black clinician. And I'm like, y'all, we are out here. It's just that the need is too much. It's a lot. And so having great mentorship by Dr. Deb, as well as amazing clinical supervisors like Dr. Shakisha Spencer and Laura Morse, and just so many amazing women as sorors, crazy enough, were willing to pour into me, have great conversations, introduce me to people, and just show me how to navigate this as a young Black clinician. So that's my journey.
Wow,
Yeah.
Awesome.
that's
Awesome.
major.
Yes. Jacinta, do you have any questions?
No, I was just saying that's major.
Yes, I mean, we all have our unique journey to becoming these geeky clinicians, but that passion that I could hear in you as you talk about, like, just from being like interested in like, okay, I'm going to be an advocate, but it's like, no, I need to take it to that next level and the next level. And you're out here doing so many amazing and wonderful things with this clinical degree and sharing this word and educating people, as you said, like you said, people need to know and they need information. And so we need to be here to be a resource for them. So it's wonderful. So I want to ask this question. We always ask the question, so Sierra, what has been your biggest challenges on this journey to full geeky clinician, right? And I know you're a business owner. You had Legacy Speaks even prior to your private practice. So you're doing all of these things on both sides. So we'll take the question and split it. So what have been your biggest challenges on the clinical side in your clinical development? And what have been the biggest challenges on the business side?
That's really good. Let me rest with that question. I think from a clinical perspective, especially from a developmental perspective, um, trying to find safe spaces for fellow Black clinicians to grow. So one of the beautiful things that I appreciate about Dr. Shakisha Spencer, she created the Circle Atlanta, where a number of clinicians of color can come together in Metro Atlanta and learn from one another and collaborate and communicate and whatnot. But I found it very difficult to establish that within the agency setting. So I probably worked for maybe like 2 or 3 agencies, or even within the hospital setting. I often found that it was very difficult to effectively case conceptualize or at least share or receive a common perspective with other clinicians who aren't the same color as me. And so, like we talked about in terms, especially within the substance abuse space, because there's so many different pervasive stigmas, not just from a mental health perspective, but also co-occurring. And so automatically within that space, you hear things like, oh, they're liars or they're addicts. Of course, they're going to say this to you and blah, 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 like very dehumanizing type of language. And we have to challenge that because at the end of the day, yes, these are our clients and they come to us for help, but regardless of the setting, we still have to see them as human beings. Even working within the hospital setting, and Jacinta could even attest to this, you are dealing with doctors in the ER, nurses in the ER who are literally treating patients as if they're not their patients too. We will literally speak to them and say, hey, these are the things that we need to consider regarding the treatment of this particular patient. Well, you need to get your patient out of my ER. And it's like, are we
Yeah.
same patient? I'm not understanding. And so I think that was one of the things that was very difficult for me, finding safe spaces for me to be able to effectively conceptualize patients and clients who look like me and having to like literally raise up my voice and like champion them, especially to clinicians that are not the same color as me, but also to like hearing the sadness of like the way that people have a tendency of being dehumanized within some of these systems. And then, of course, another thing that I also found too was very difficult, especially in private practice, is managed care. And how managed care, man, they do not want to pay us our worth. And we really are trying our hardest to increase accessibility to services and whatnot. but we still gotta eat too. So it's
Yeah.
just like, man, it's crazy. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. I totally agree with that in terms of the challenges around working with people to try to see, especially because all three of us have that background in addiction, right? Like we've all worked for a long time with clients with substance use disorder, and really just being able to work with other clinicians to be like, they're like our clients are human
They're
first,
human, right?
and then their actions that might be painful that they've engaged in, but they're still deserving of dignity and respect. And if we cannot work and walk into a room with a client and have the there for the grace of God go I mentality, then we don't need to be here doing this, right?
Right.
So if we can't do that, then yeah. So I definitely have say that has I've seen that as a challenge as well. And Jacinta, you also mentioned that like you were in the hospital with seeing some of the same things that Sierra was seeing in terms of those.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And unfortunately, sometimes it would come down to having to remind the doctors of their legal obligation, you know. So that hurts.
Yeah,
That hurts.
yeah,
But sometimes it was necessary.
yeah. But and that challenge of finding community. And I think that you're right. Sora Chikisha has did a great job forming the circle, and we all have this space that we can lean on each other, connect with each other, and go from there because we don't want to be functioning in isolation. And so to be able to have those that space to know like, okay, if I'm having a rough time in a clinical situation, I know that there's some people there that are safe. Yeah, yeah. And so, what would you say have been the biggest challenge on the entrepreneurial side, on the business side?
Yeah, so I would think aside from the managed care component, I would say like consistency is really key. Not just consistency with the clients maintaining consistency in their sessions, but I also think too, as entrepreneurs, we become our own bosses and having to be consistent with making sure that we're submitting things on time, getting notes done instead of them being like piled up until the end of the week or the end of the month, or maybe being consistent with posting and marketing ourselves, or being consistent with getting out there and meeting new people and whatnot. I think entrepreneurship not just requires grit, but it also requires consistency.
Yes.
And I think I didn't realize how hard I went early on in my profession because I was constantly posting and creating content. And now I'm like, I don't care about this stuff, but it's like, Sierra, you got a business now. You have to do it. And I'm like, oh my word. And so I'm being willing to remain committed to what it is that God has called you to do so that the right people can find you. So I think that's the most difficult thing as an entrepreneur.
The
Yeah,
important thing is, though, that you did it when you were young enough and invincible enough that it didn't matter. You know, as you get older, you start going, oh, I don't have the energy for all of that.
Very much so. I'm like, whoever finds me, okay? They was like, I have like these messages that I literally will just copy and paste if somebody shoots me an email instead of having to do it all over again and whatnot. But
Yeah.
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 Mhm.
yeah, excellent. So on the other side of that, what have been your biggest wins, your biggest successes uh, as it relates to both clinically and entrepreneurially?
Yeah, so I think off the top, this is something that's always going to be a big win for me is like at the time of the pandemic, and this is around the time where we were seeing a lot of our fellow Black men and women being murdered. So at the height of the pandemic, I hosted a digital conference called Mental Wellness for the Culture. I did it for 2 years straight. and just super excited and grateful for the opportunity to collaborate with other clinicians who have a heart for advocacy by sharing their expertise. So they talked about so many different components of wellness. As a clinician, I like to focus on wellness counseling for anybody who's watching this for the first time. Wellness counseling leads into like the 8 different dimensions of wellness. So physical, intellectual, emotional, occupational, financial, spiritual, social, and environmental, and recognizing that we are complex human beings with complex emotions, and we're more than just our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And so the conference was always rooted in wellness and getting people to see how they could tend to those areas of wellness and build harmony in those areas. And so I was very grateful for being able to execute that just back to back and to provide something that was free for people who look like us. And I greatly appreciated that. Now, in terms of wins from an entrepreneurial perspective, I think starting my own private practice is a huge win. I had no intentions on starting a private practice. I was perfectly fine with being a contract therapist, absolutely, but literally just being obedient to God and just making sure that I'm just walking in his will, because obviously there are some projects or maybe even some things that he's called me to, and I'm just like, all right, well, here we are. So even the mere fact of just starting a private practice, I think that's a huge win. To me, it's not necessarily about the money. I think the money's going to come regardless, but just being able to serve clients in the manner that I would like to serve them, and then like have the caseload that I want to have too. I think that was really dope. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Excellent, excellent. So I love that you you mentioned mental wellness for the culture, but also
Mhm.
that concept of the framework that you're
Yeah.
working out of mental wellness. Now, I see you all over the LinkedIn, going to these companies, presenting, teaching the broader community about wellness and mental wellness, workplace wellness. Tell us a little bit about your work in that area. Yeah, tell us a little bit more about that stuff.
Yes, absolutely. And this came from the pandemic as well, interestingly enough. So, around the time of the pandemic, around like 2020, organizations were reaching out to me, asking me to conduct trainings simply because it was very difficult for their managers as well as their top performers to transition from working in person to working from home, which is totally understandable because there are some people who rush to work to escape home, and there's some people who rush home to escape from work. And so when you have these two prompters or triggers in one space, that causes a lot of stress. You're trying to focus on doing your job, sending this email while also cooking and making sure that your kids are in virtual school. It's just a lot going on. And then also too, we see that like accessibility was at an all-time high. People didn't know how to step away from the laptop. They were receiving text messages and emails and notifications all throughout the night. And there was this like skewed expectation for employees to be on just because you never knew what was going to happen moving forward. So I started off with helping individuals or teams navigate the transition between working in the office to working from home. That also led to other curriculums that I created, like workplace boundaries or mental health in the workplace, or maybe even effective communication within the workplace, executive coaching, leadership development, things like that. And it just happened with word of mouth. So, yeah, that's the work that I do, which I'm very grateful for because work culture is very important to me. I know what it's like to love your job, but hate the work environment because of the types of managers that you're working underneath. Or maybe you love your job, but you're dealing with some antagonistic behavior that's being thrown at you. And like a lot of, realistically speaking, that's one of the reasons why a lot of people transition into entrepreneurship. I'm not saying that everybody's meant to be an entrepreneur, but they're forced out of the organizations that they love so much because of the toxic workplace culture. Even as a woman of color, the microaggressions that we deal with on a day-to-day basis, always being questioned about our expertise and our knowledge, or maybe even being passed up for opportunities that we worked so hard for and that we're qualified or so just wanted to support individuals as they are navigating their career success and also helping them to reframe what success looks like, because I think a lot of people see success as a ladder that is constantly being climbed, but there's some horizontal steps that need to be taken too. So
Yes, you better speak, girl.
Yep, she preaching over here. Yes. Yes. And we were just talking about that earlier. The combination of loving what you do and loving where you work is ideal. And chef's kiss of like everybody should have that. Like, or at least
Yeah.
strive to have that. Like that is just, yeah. And then yeah, so I love that. I absolutely love that you're able to bring that into those spaces and help, especially like women of color manage like kind of corporate environments and things like that, because the microaggressions are real. They're real in the corporate space, they're real in the clinical space, they're real in the nonprofit space.
Yeah.
Back in the day when I was an executive director for a nonprofit that served uh, homeless people with addiction, one of our board members at the time asked me, how do you know how to do that?
you don't know how to do it. Oh, you better catch up. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's just the insanity of it all. Or, like especially with the Crown Act, the fact that we even had to have a Crown Act created just to protect the way that our hair looks so that we don't get fired. It's just insane.
Insane.
But we spend so many hours at work. You literally have companies like Google and Facebook who make it conducive for people to stay at work beyond the 8-hour work shift. So they have daycares and like premium parking, or maybe even like carrier services and whatnot. You spend so much time at work and not enough at home. You want to be comfortable there too. You also don't want to root your identity in the work that you do too.
And what a way to start off your kids, right? They're at your job for 4 hours a day, and they're not getting paid anything. They're just there. Yeah. So
Yeah.
we are raising a nation of little workaholics.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Oh, so that actually brings up the next question I wanted to ask, right?
Yeah.
So I want to get your input on whether you believe work-life balance is a myth or not a myth.
I
Hmm.
love that
Mm.
question. Yeah. So, whenever I discuss work-life balance, I tell people to just strike it out. There's no such thing as balance. I always encourage people to aim for work-life harmony. And the way that I explain it is like kind of like a night at the symphony, right? So, if you look at a orchestra, the orchestra is comprised of the brass section, the percussion section, the string section, all that jazz, right? And throughout the night, the songs change over time. But if you notice, not every instrument group is playing within each song. And so, for the ones that are taking their time to wait to get back into the song, you don't see them pack up their stuff and say, hey, I'll see y'all in the next 15 minutes when y'all are done. They literally sit there until it's their time to re enter back into the song. And so, it's important for us as people to navigate life in the same way. If you are trying to work on your physical fitness, or maybe you are wanting to build healthy relationships, or maybe you are trying to figure out how to gain new skills and whatnot, wherever you're at in that wheel of wellness within those 8 dimensions of wellness, you're not going to try to tackle all 8, because that creates additional stress and you're going to feel burnt out and you're going to beat yourself up because you're not meeting those expectations. But maybe even finding intersections between 2 or 3 or maybe 4, sometimes 5, or maybe it's just maybe 1 you're dealing with in this season of life, and figuring out how to create harmony between all of them. And it's not to say that those things become irrelevant or they're pushed off to the back burner. They're just waiting until it's time for them to be reintegrated back into the flow of things. So, yeah.
Oh, I love that so much. I love that visual. I love that
Yeah.
example. Oh, that's just it's just perfect in terms of like you're right, like kind of trying to play all the instruments all the time, all at the same time.
At the same time.
You're not going to have harmony. You're going to have a hot mess. So the idea of being gentle with yourself, going into a flow of things, focusing on that harmony and giving yourself permission to do that. Oh, I love that. I love that so much. Jacinta,
Yeah.
you're going to say something?
No, I was enjoying that analogy also. I think it's important for us to realize that it's okay to not feel like I have to do something every minute of the day. It's okay to say, hold up, I just need a minute and I can get back into it, but I just need to breathe for a second.
Absolutely. Even as you guys were talking, it's just learning to advocate for yourself, even though you're the one that you're advocating to. And so reminding yourself that like rest, you're still doing something.
Hmm.
I hear this all the time from clients. It's like, I feel lazy. I feel like I'm not doing anything. And I'm just like, no, your body is regenerating its cells. You're giving yourself time to heal. You're giving yourself
Yeah.
an opportunity to be able to breathe and just have mental clarity without any distractions. It's okay to just
Okay.
rest and chill. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah, I think
yeah.
lazy is a weapon word.
hmm
People weaponize that word. They try
Yeah.
to use it to hurt people, shame people, belittle people. It's a weapon. I don't think
Hmm.
it's a thing.
hmm
Yeah.
I think that's one of the stigmas that we often see when it comes to people exploring mental health, right? When people say that, oh, you're still dealing with that, you're still grappling with that, you're just lazy, you need to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and
Mm.
all of those negative narratives and whatnot. When in fact, just trying to get out of bed and put 2 feet on the ground, that's work within itself. The fact that
Yeah.
you were able to get up and go to the bathroom and then like come back to the bedroom, I think that's something to be worth celebrating.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Sierra, um, tell us a little bit about anything that you have going on that you want to promote right now. And then also, I really, really want to invite you to be a presenter for Geeky Clinicians Academy.
Yes.
Right? We need you to come and present and do one of our continuing education offerings in 2025.
Absolutely, Dr. Deb. If anything you need, just let me know. And just let me know when I'll put it on the calendar. That's totally not a problem. In
Right.
terms of promoting, once again, I am a new private practice owner. And so if you are anyone who resides in Georgia and Maryland, and you're looking to work through life transitions, life adjustments, or even anxiety, feel free to head over to 13wellnesscollective.com or 13wellness.com. And that way you can schedule your appointment or your consultation so that I can make sure that we are a good fit with one another. And then also too, I have a e-workbook called the Clarity Companion, which helps individuals who are struggling with self-defeating thoughts or stressing out about their anxious thoughts or feeling like
Mm.
they're dealing with a lot of self-doubt or feeling overwhelmed. And you can find that at conquermystress.com, and that's conquermystress.com for the Clarity Companion. Yep.
And we can get that link and we can put it in the show notes here as
Yep.
well.
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay, great. Yes. Excellent. Excellent. Jacinta, you have anything?
I just want to say, I know that we have not talked much in recent times, but I want to let you know how much Legacy Speaks has meant for me. You have introduced some of the most innovative clinicians and made me aware of things that I had no idea was out there. The one clinician that does mama drama. Come
hmm
on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So I love it. I
Yep.
love it. And I just want to say thank you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I have not done a podcast episode in a long time.
Yeah.
But for those of you who are watching it, feel free to go check out former episodes. Legacy Speaks podcast is still up and running. You can find it on all major streaming platforms. And the episode that Jacinta is referring to is with Dr. Dalicia Bonner, and she specializes in helping women overcome or at least work through their toxic mother relationships. So absolutely, yeah.
Awesome. Excellent. So, Sierra, before we go, we always like to ask this question of our guests. Kind of thinking back over your life, over your career, and looking forward, what would you say are your best hopes for both our clinical field and for maybe the business side of our profession as well? What are your best hopes?
I'm trying to find a different answer. However, I think I'm just going to go with the answers that are most natural for me. One, my greatest hope is that we, as a profession, especially licensed professional counselors, we're able to successfully execute license portability. I know we currently have the Counseling Compact that several states are a part of, but I look forward to the day that it's actually being implemented and utilized rather than it just being a conceptualization. And then from another angle of perspective, I hope that the people who need us or the people who would like to work with us begin to value us to the point where they're willing to pay for our self-pay rates. I totally understand that insurance can be utilized. However, my hope is that people see the value in investing in their wellness in the same way that they value getting their hair done and their nails done or these trips and whatnot, because you can catch a flight, but at the end of the day, when you return home, you're still dealing with the same foolishness. So please, if you find an amazing clinician and they are out of network, please be willing to set aside the money to invest in you because you are worth it. It's not necessarily about like paying us our worth, but you are worth it. If you're willing to buy the car that you want, pay for the clinician that you want. And that's my hope.
Yes, that you said a word. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. This has been such a pleasure. I've learned so much. This is such a great conversation. And so thank you, thank you for coming today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting me, ladies. I truly appreciate it. I truly do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so
Absolutely.
And so for viewers, if you have not already, ring the bell, subscribe, like, share, and check out the show notes for ways to stay connected with Sierra, see if she might be a good fit and do that consultation and get access to her free ebook. And thank you, Alice, for coming to this episode. Thank you.
Yay.